It's amazing that there is an industry called FemTech. Not because of the name, but because there are so many amazing people building this technology that we all need. Start out with people felt that it was a niche thing. It was like, is this even a thing? And then pretty quickly people realize, oh yeah, it is actually a thing. We have some very specific need because of our biology, and technology should, of course, address them. The political landscapes are changing around the world, and there is some real backlash. And I feel that there is, in a way, a new fuel of energy in this movement because of the backlash. People are like, we have to do this work more than ever. There is no good reason to not invest in women's health. We know the data. We know it's good for people's individual life, national economies. It's good for everything. Honestly, it makes no sense when women don't thrive across the board. And yet we have a world that in many doesn't help women thrive.
Welcome to FemLead, the podcast dedicated to empowering the next generation of leaders through inspiring stories of success from female role models. Our mission is to equip you with actionable insights and practical tools to achieve your professional goals. FemLead is more than just a podcast. It's a vibrant community and a dynamic platform committed to closing the gender gap in leadership. In each episode, your host Alexandra brings you powerful perspectives and dynamic strategies from remarkable women who share their journeys, advice, and experiences. Whether it's career progression, leadership, or overcoming challenges, FemLead is here to help you thrive and set clear goals for success. If you enjoy our show, please leave us a review and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. Let's dive in and take action.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of FemLead Podcast. We have a true disruptor here today. We have Ida Tin, the co-founder and former CEO of Clue app, joining us for our discussion today. And she's going to talk about her entrepreneurial career. She's going to talk about how she scaled Clue and how she raised almost $70 million. And she's also going to talk about boundaries, both personally and at work. Ida's really a cool person. I really admire her. I follow her on LinkedIn, and I really admire how she shares important thoughts on what does it mean to be a woman and other insights into female health, so that we expand the thinking about how we look at female health and health tech in general. She coined the term FemTech. So female and technology, and looking at female health as an important part of our society and industries when it comes to building technology. And she helped by focusing on this research of reproductive health, menopause, also period. She also helped Apple with developing their period tracking software for their healthcare platform. She has many accolades. She's really a fantastic role model for us. And interestingly enough, she grew up doing motorcycle tours as an entrepreneur, and then she co-founded the Clue app that now has millions of users, and as I said, managed to raise millions of dollars. Ida is coming today at FemLead to talk about Clue, to talk about how she scaled the business. She talk about boundaries, and to also talk about how she plans to take the future of female health to the next level by joining other initiatives. So I really welcome you to listen to this interview. She has a pretty awesome perspective on things, and I really feel like by having role models such as Ida at FemLead, we really expand the way we think about important topics, especially when it comes to female health. So enjoy this episode and let us know your feedback. Thank you for watching. Hello, Ida. Welcome to FemLead Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining. I'm really a fan of yours. I've been following you online for a few years. Know a lot about the journey with Clue, but I also want to really highlight the fact that you are a disruptor and you are a role model for many of us out there. So thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I look so much forward to going through your journey, but also hearing your advice. So I want to start by asking about, when you look at the past 5 years, really as a disruptor and as a person that has always been pushing boundaries in terms of culture, in terms of norms, also tradition. What does it mean for you now to work in FemTech, as we discussed in the intro, and how does the past 5 years have been for you?
Well, it's amazing that there is an industry called FemTech. Not because of the name, but because there are so many amazing people building this technology that we all need. There's definitely been some wild sort of curves and things happening in FemTech. I think to start out with, people felt that it was a niche thing. It was like, is this even a thing? And then pretty quickly, people realized, oh yeah, it is actually a thing. We have some very specific needs because of our biology, and technology should, of course, address them. And there was a lot of interest, and the public sector started really leaning in. And then I would say now there is definitely some really strong headwinds where the political landscapes are changing around the world, and there is some real backlash. But at the same time, I feel that there is more than ever a real global movement because people are building all over the planet, literally. They're building in Europe, America, Africa, Asia, South America. And I feel that there is, in a way, a new fuel of energy in this movement because of the backlash. People are like, we have to do this work more than ever. So
Absolutely. And you, Ida, you coined a term called FemTech, and it really, for us, I think it changed how we look at healthcare for women, at investment in women. And I want to ask you, what was your vision when you introduced this term, and did you even think it would be such a big, disruptive moment in our culture?
mm, you know, I could see that we were being perceived as being kind of random small startups doing random small things. And as I realized that there were more people building in this field of female health, I was like, this is not a small thing. This is a really massive thing. And I wanted people to understand that we are all one group in a way building this really big thing. And we needed to be perceived as kind of relevant and important and worth investing in, and not as this sort of embarrassing taboo niche area. I don't think I had ever imagined just how much power there can be in one word. And I also recognize that it's not the word in itself, it's the fact that there was something that I think culture was really ripe with. We people are tired of waiting. Women are tired of having technology that just doesn't fit like feels like it fits, or it's not addressing the problems, issues that feel so close to heart. So I think the world is very ripe, and I feel like having a word kind of helps something crystallize that was already potent in time. Um, no, I had not imagined that it would be so helpful for the world to have this word, and I think it makes people find each other, uh, which is important because we need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you look at the term of femtech, meaning women's health and investing into this, half of the population's needs and priorities, we still see that women do not really get nearly as much attention when it comes to everything, including healthcare and investments into new medicines and so on. Why
Mm.
do you think that is?
I think the first thing to really come to terms with is that it makes no sense. There is no good reason to not invest
Mhm.
in women's health. We know the data. We know it's good for people's individual lives. It's good for the national economies. It's good for global. It's good for everything. It makes no sense. But honestly, it makes no sense when women don't thrive across the board. And yet we have a world that in many ways doesn't help women thrive.
Mhm.
And, I think that becomes a really deep question. Like, why has our world evolved into a way where the two genders are so oddly at odds with each other? And I think part of this answer, in my mind, actually lies in the fact that men also have a lot of gender constriction and kind of unhelpful gender norms that they live in. And I think if we are to see really thriving, strong women, we actually also need to liberate the men. So it's a very complex and deep question. And I think when we talk about why do women raise so little capital, even in femtech, we've seen the numbers. It's heartbreaking. Like
Mm.
most money in femtech goes to men doing this without the collaboration of women. Because
Mm.
we should definitely have men also building femtech, but we need to do it together. And I think part of the reason is that a lot of these conversations in the venture capital funds are actually very human. We think it's a business conversation. We think it's strictly logical. We think we look at the numbers, we're rational. But I think the truth is that a lot has to do with like, do I feel comfortable? Do I trust this other person? Do I understand their strengths? Do they fit my pattern recognition of what a strong leader is? And so many other things where we just meet a lot of gender problems.
Mm. You said in one of your interviews, and I'll jump into this because it's a great follow up. I think you said that it helped that you had a male co-founder.
Mm.
Why is that?
It's because, well, first of all, I should say we have complementary skill set, and he's a great people person, and he's great at understanding networks and who knows who and things where I'm not as sharp as he is. Um, but again, I think a lot of these conversations are social, and it's like a social dance. Who did you get the introduction from? Who talks warmly about you? Do you sit next to somebody at a dinner party? And my experience was often as a woman, often you're the only woman in the room, and it's not ill will, but you are changing the social fabric in that room the moment you step in, no matter what you do, just for you being there. Just the fact that you're there, something shifts in the social fabric. And I think for a lot of investors, it just kind of flows a little easier with another man there. Um, I mean, again, it's a combination of many things, but we also know from many studies that when a woman says something, it doesn't carry the same weight. It's not being heard the same way as when a man says it, and it's not rational. It doesn't make sense. But I think there is something in this, and especially when then men had to sit there and be comfortable enough to say yes, to invest into a field of something they can never experience in their own body. Then it became like a bridge over,
Mm-hmm.
that there was a man there spending his life also building this. But I'm not saying it's great. I think we need a lot of training for investors to listen to pitches. We spend so much energy training the women to pitch perfectly. I think we need to spend way more energy on helping the people receiving the communication do it in a really gender-informed way.
If you look at all the data that we've been sharing for the past 4 years at Family, the number of millions of dollars invested into women did not change dramatically. We still look at 2 to 3% of global venture capital going into women-founded companies, and it's just disheartening to discuss the same topic over and over again. And even though there's so many movements, to see that even that is being challenged. And on that topic, you did have a TED talk on anger and boundaries that you said at the time helped you in your journey. And I want to talk a little bit about how do you feel and how do you manage your emotional landscape when you are in such a, I would say, also sensitive field. You're dealing with women's health. How do you approach setting boundaries without anger? And
Mm.
why is that so important?
Well, first of all, I will say there is definitely a kind of health that is very healthy to set boundaries and to say what we don't want, but also what we want. I think that's equally important. And I think actually to move things forward, we probably need to spend more energy describing what do we want? What does a great venture fund experience look like? Because that's how we educate and help. Because again, I've only met good people, people
Hmm.
try to do the right thing. It's not ill will that we see these numbers. So we really need to extend sort of bridges to each other, I think. But women are angry, and we are angry for good reasons. And I think it's absolutely okay that we channel that to take action and to say when something is not okay, when something is not a funny joke, or a health procedure was not done in a way that was actually okay. And I feel I'm in this very lucky position that I get to put into words some of these sort of things that I think many people experience around why we're not getting funding. Hey, what's going on? Or why don't we have technology to help me understand when I'm going to go into menopause, or my risk profile for breast cancer, or my, something else. And not everybody have the opportunity to do that in the same way. Women express what they can where they are, because often it's very expensive to express our anger and it can be dangerous. So women have to use caution. So my invitation would be for everybody to express as much as is possible. And probably more can be expressed than we think for many of us. But I think it's absolutely needed. I think it's part of making the world healthier that women kind of share more of their intelligence of what is needed, what is not needed. I think women are too quiet often.
And when you had to develop that skill of not only pitching but in general, handling different situations as a founder, what was for you the North Star in this industry?
I think for me, I always came back to the need that people have out in the world that we are trying to not even solve, but at least, support this sense of, no, this is important. Like, this is not just like some idea I had, like, people really need this. And that calling, I think it's really deep in me because I had an unusual upbringing, traveling around the world with my parents on motorcycles since I was little. I've seen a lot of people's lives around the world, and I just think I have this, it just sits so deep in me in this sense of like how much women go through, how strong and amazing our bodies are, but also like, why must we suffer so much? Like,
Hmm.
that makes no sense. From any kind of angles, it makes no sense. So I think that was, I think that's my driver, really.
Mhm. Mhm.
So somebody says like kind of giggle or thinks it's not important or kind of even a bit embarrassing. I just know with everything in me, like, no, it's not really, really important.
It's so
Like,
important, and it's not a joke, and it's not really something that should be deemed as taboo. Talking about period at work, talking about cycles at work. This is a career focused podcast, and I also want to be true to myself and not hide the fact that women have a cycle and they don't always feel at their best. And somehow we have not managed by this year and day and age to actually take that into account in any sort of planning. And for me, the fact that we're not thinking about it, even with all the data that we have now, is just shocking. But that's because the world wasn't built for us. And now that we're trying to, say something and be more out there, we're being challenged every day. And for me, doing this podcast, for example, it's a small part that I want to play in changing how we look at women in the workplace, at women in societies, and how we definitely are the backbone of our societies. You also, Ida, changed a bit the game by introducing this term femtech, but it also brought you criticism. And I want to ask you, what do you think has been helpful about you know building such a strong movement around femtech, and do you see any sort of changes or improvement that you want us all to keep in mind as we try to make the world a better place?
hmm, I definitely see that the definition of the term has broadened so that in the beginning, I was thinking mostly about reproductive health because that was the world I came from. But then people say, hold on, bone health and brain health and mental health, those are all things that are, where symptoms express themselves in a very particular way in women. Um, and I thought, yeah, that's true. And that should definitely be included in the definition as well. And then there's a criticism of why do we need technology to be labeled as sort of for women? And I actually totally agree. Like, I don't want the woman computer or the woman iPhone. I definitely don't want it pink and stringed. But the fact is that we have needs that are very unique because of the biology we have. So then, of course, in my mind, we want technology that addresses those needs specifically. I mean, that's why the term is FemTech because it was like we have FinTech. That is technology that specifically addresses need. We have in financial technology or EdTech or insurance tech, all the other techs.
Mhm.
So for me, it's you could of course have hope that lots of innovation had been made in the space around women's health. The fact is that that was not the case. It was also a fact that people perceived it as taboo, kind of covered, and that there was no funding and no attention. So I could hope that one day maybe we don't need to call it anything specific, but we are really far from it. And I think I'm also just pragmatic of like, if a word helps, I bring it on. Like anything that helps, you know? And if one day we don't need it anymore, great, let's forget the word again. you know? But I think rather we're gonna have more specialization of the word. I mean, tech is maybe, a neighboring or sister term for something really specific. Maybe we're gonna have things like, I don't know, pleasure tech, or maybe we'll have, I don't know. I mean, people can come up with all the good ideas they have. But and also, I mean, people are always welcome to not use a term. Nobody has forces. Zero marketing spend has been made on making this term a thing. It has happened entirely organic. I think there was just a need for orientation, basically.
Mm.
And I mean, for the future, I think if we are to really move things, we need to make men understand better what it feels like to have a woman's body. I think it's really crucial because I think most men, they just simply do not know what it feels like. They don't, I mean, I sometimes think like, wow, if they knew what it takes sometimes for women to show up, and they look great and they do all the things, but they also have wild stuff happening in their bodies and they might have really big concerns and they have all the rest that women have. We are superhuman sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of men, they want to support, but they have to be invited.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Ida. Thank you for that. You also, your background is that you are a very well-known entrepreneur of a very popular app called Clue. It started as a menstruation tracking app, and now I believe it has expanded. As a user, I would know because I get all the notifications. So, and Clue historically has taken, or historically, based on our last few years of updates and how the industry has evolved, we know that Clue has taken a different approach compared to other apps that are doing similar services such as Flow. How do you see now from this perspective, especially after looking at it maybe from the outside now, how do you see the future of period tracking and reproductive health in general?
Well, it's definitely a tool that many, many million people have come to use and rely on and that they find really helpful. So that's not going to change. They're concerned about data privacy and for good reasons, because there are people in the market who don't operate in markets, or they're not under the kind of regulatory rigor that you are if you're based in Europe. And this is a concern because it doesn't give users the safety that is really regulated what you can do with the data, and that you have to comply with what you have said to your user you're going to do with the data. Uh, Now, it's really good we have regulation. That is so important. It protects users. Those are ethical guidelines that we as society set, so that tech has to follow that. Also, when there's pressure to make money, when investors want something, I think this is a very scary and kind of valid concern. And as a consumer, it's really difficult to know, if I use this product versus other, how's my data protected. Across the board, I'll say as a guide, choose an app that is based in Europe. That's your best protection right now. And it's good.
Yeah.
You can actually trust that.
It's also difficult, right? Because you're basically telling the world to look at a specific geography for data protection, and that's
Very difficult. And
it's difficult. It's
like,
why should we even it's a great, honestly, it's a great discussion to have in terms of how we're protecting ourselves and how companies protect us as users when it comes to why we're using the service, right? We're talking about healthcare, we're talking about um personal, information that we're sharing. And I I'm happy you share your perspective, but I'm also again disheartened by hearing, how difficult it is to ensure that protection, right?
yeah, I mean, the whole field about regulation is complex, but in a way, it boils down to there are some people leading companies. What do they want? What do they do? What does their ethic tell them that they can do and what they can't do? And we had to talk a lot more about ethics when we build technology. I am not impressed with the level of conversations that are being had in the tech community around these things. And it's not considered kind of sexy or important. And then that is to the next question, which is what do we value? What do we give monetary value to? And if every time we value companies, we don't care about their ethics or we don't care about their kind of honoring the trust that users show them, then the whole industry will drive founders to do not great things, seen from a user perspective. So we have to call success, you know, included in this concept of success has to be, is this good for users? Is it good for the planet? Is this honorable? Is this okay? Does this create the kind of world we want to have? And if we think that is success, then let's value it too and and kind of reward it. Because
Mhm.
right now we have a tech industry that doesn't reward it.
Ida, you shared a lot, and you also are a public speaker. You talk a lot about the implications of technology and development for female-focused solution. How important it is to have all your data in check. How important it is to have regulations. I want to ask you from a fundraising perspective, being a founder from Europe and co-founding a company a few years ago. How do you see that partnership, first of all, because you had the co-founder, as we've mentioned, and how do you, looking back, have decided, how do you describe a good partner for building a startup to begin with?
I think it's always good if you have quite complementary skill sets when
Mm-hmm.
you care deeply about the same vision. Um, but I mean, honestly, it was very organic how I found the four male co-founders that I ended up having. um, but it was like somebody said, "Oh, I think I could build this hardware." It was a hardware idea I had initially. I was like, "Oh, great, let's do it." I think it's also good to remember that the team will change over time, even co-founders. So finding somebody who can help you with the next step. Maybe it's not thinking whether this person will be perfect for step number 5,000 that you're gonna have to take in the company, but is this somebody that can be good right now and a little bit into the future?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, I mean, some of it didn't work out, and then something else happened. I think the most important is just to move and to do
Mm-hmm. And
and
when
learn.
it comes, Ida, to investors, because you did mention it briefly, and I did have it as my next question. How do you find the right investors for you, especially in this industry?
But generally, people that you feel understand what you want to build and why, and that you kind of get along with on some level. There is a lot of sort of, I mean, venture capital is kind of but if people care about brands, I think. So if you can be strategic about like what are, good investors that will make other investors interested in doing something with them, there is a little bit of this sort of, again, social dance, which is kind of strange. But then I guess you want to see, you know, are they smart? Do they have knowledge that they will share? Do they have fair terms? Early on, I remember somebody said, try and find people that are your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
People that feel like you are in the same sort of. value set in life generally. And then there could be thoughts about, where in the world would it be good to have some, but I mean, yeah, it's so hard to raise money. Like if you throw money on the table, take them and run. If you get to have choice, that's really wonderful. But mostly that will probably just help you negotiate the price more
Mm.
than choose the perfect one. I mean, there might be some that you would be like, this is not the right fit. Let's not do this.
Right.
That's also important.
Right. And that's something you can easily see as you progress. It's also, Ida, that you started this from scratch, right? So I think there's something there about understanding your journey, and that's why it was so important for me to connect with you, because I definitely see you as a role model for all of us looking to build communities, companies, movements, and we start from a deep passion for a topic,
Mm.
solving a problem that is for the many, and in an ethical way that will bring us closer to really having a better understanding, but ultimately a better outcome for women everywhere. And you build Clue, you raised how many, $30 million or more by now, and
Probably 60 or 70, I think.
60 or $70 million. I mean, huge success. At the same time, it it wasn't easy, and you talk openly about it, and I really admire that, because what does it mean to raise so much, especially in an industry that is underfunded and undervalued? And it's it's about time that we talk about it and collectively discuss how can we make it better for all the women out there that represent half of the population and still have issues that are not being addressed,
Mm.
or if there are, then at some point you wonder what will this mean in the long term for the industry, based on regulations, based on how things change, based on how society evolves, and should we even worry about it? Because that's, for me, what you mentioned earlier about data privacy is, I really, for me, it's not necessarily about where you're based, but it's more about, you raise some very, honest concerns about data access. And for me, that's like really worrying if I
Mm.
know that my data can be used not for good in
Yeah.
any sort of setup. And if that's even an option, or if that's even something that, you know, um, has happened or could happen or whatever, and you as a person that has built up a company in this space are worried about, I want more people to know about it, and I want us to
Yes.
collectively kind of be aware of the fact that this is a situation we should consider when we look at how the world evolves. I hope that's not the case, and I really hope that every year we become smarter on how to
Mm.
handle this even novel, though it is not a novel topic. And yeah, I have many questions to ask you, Ita, but I do want to focus a little bit now on what does it mean really to look at the women's cycle when you look at the boundaries. And you talked about bodily boundaries. So you talked about the pregnancy, menopause, beyond, and how all of these different parts of life are shaping the way that we build more inclusive health solutions. And I want to
Mm.
ask you, what do you mean by that when you look um, at building solutions? What do you mean to look at bodily boundaries, and how you've implemented that in your journey?
I have a lot to say. I want to, but if I may, I just want to make one little more loop on what we just talked about before
Yes.
data privacy. I just want to say people will always want to generate, accumulate, and use data. There will be people on the planet who want to do this. And if we shy away from doing that, if we're ethical people, then we leave the whole field open for the ones who don't care about ethics. We must not shy away from collecting, generating, and using data, especially in a time in AI, where we need these data sets to be gendered, because otherwise we will build the world in data again that only fits men. I just need to say that. We must not
Absolutely.
shy away from generating and using data.
Absolutely.
Um, so, we live on this fantastic planet, which is this big bubble of an ecosystem, right? And it has boundaries and it has cycles and it has this regenerative flow, which is just absolutely magical that it works so well. It's taken billions of years to create. And we in our, we are this nature. We are not even just part of it. Like we are we are living this amazing regenerative process. And the way that we live as women, where we are reminded that we have this constant cycle for all the many years where we are fertile, um, it's a really good learning laboratory to understand something very basic about how are we going to have to live on this world in sync with how it works for it to actually be healthy and thriving and sustainable. And I think there is something that's just really deep in us about understanding, that we are bodies on this planet. We cannot ignore that we are bodies. Like it's it, we're moving to a place where it's almost only brain. We are actually this like thing that needs to work. It's just the same way that the planet is a living system that needs to work. And I feel that there's so much intelligence in that deep understanding that the world urgently needs. Like we need to start doing things in a way that actually respects and honors how life itself functions. It's like there are basic rules on how life works. We have been ignoring them for a long time and it's not going well. And I think women and also men, but I think there is some really important sort of embodied knowledge that we have that we can apply. So if we are to build the world again, we will think more wisely about how to do it. And whether that's organizing how we work or how we move around in traffic or how we build anything, like if we remember that we are bodies that also need to work or how we lead our careers. Like I know for sure that I lived a life as CEO that was much faster than my body actually liked. We are kind of slow creatures. It takes time to digest. We need to sleep a lot. We need time to cuddle with people we like. Like we if we really live as our bodies like it, our world would look quite different. And probably we're gonna have to somehow learn to move towards that direction again. I think there are many things we can do. When I was still at Clue, I understood that thinking is one of the most underrated leadership sort of activities there. Like in a normal CEO calendar, there is zero time to think. It's just not. And I was like, that's crazy. So I decided every Wednesday there are no meetings, just no meetings ever on Wednesdays. And this was really helpful. And also for me to just like, you know, get a gasp of air. And I don't think you serve your organization well by being totally packed in your calendar the whole day. I also recognized that I was doing too little sports, so I started having a private trainer. And then I was like, actually, I could just have more people with me in the park doing this. So then it became something the whole company could do. And we're like, we should have an hour and a half every Tuesday, Body Tuesday. Do whatever you want that's physical, full salary. And then everybody did that. And at some point, we're like, actually, a 4-day work week, we are as productive and people love it. They feel like they get like an extra life because now the weekend is 3 days and they can do courses and they can really recover. And so I think there's so many things you can do as a leader and in yourself and also make choices. I think, I for me, I rather have time than money. That's I I could definitely work more and probably earn more, but I rather have the time. I don't ever want to be as busy again. It's
Yeah, no,
very deep personal choices. I mean, but
absolutely. And it's great to hear that from you, Ida, because in a funny way, you're challenging what we think is a successful entrepreneur and how we should be spending our time striving for more. Yeah, it's the how, and it's also, I guess, to your point, something I'm thinking of is that not everybody is meant to be a founder and raise money for their idea. And somehow we think that we all need to fit in the same bucket of VCs and, funds and so on. And
gosh,
perhaps that's a good reminder that if you have an idea and you build a cool product, you don't need to follow the traditional path. And you also don't need to grow to this extent. You can also consider other options for you to bring
yes,
to life that mission. And for
yeah,
some, it's not even entrepreneurship, though we think it is. For some, it's not even that. If If
I
the
agree.
mission is what's important and you found another avenue for that, that's not even the key one. But I'm super happy you shared this, Ida, because you're, as I said, you're challenging a bit how we're thinking about entrepreneurship in a very healthy way. And perhaps the audience that's listening now is thinking, maybe this is for me, but maybe I can broaden my horizon and consider what is it that I want out of it.
Mm,
And
yes.
what sort of people I want to surround myself with. Am I really motivated by growth? That's a big, 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 big one that not many people think. But like you said, growth is hugely important when you work with venture capitalists. And this is something that's known, but it's not understood necessarily when you start that cycle, right? And it's a big question because maybe that's not why you're building. That's not why you're there, right? Thank you so much, Ida. My God, this was such a pleasure. I could talk to you for hours. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you also enjoyed this interview,
Yeah,
and
there's. Thank you.
we'll see you around in the next few months. Please, everyone, follow Ida on LinkedIn because she shares some pretty cool
Mm,
posts every week. And thank you all for listening today. Stay tuned for more interviews with inspiring role models, and
mm.
follow us at femlead.com.
If you liked this episode, please give us a review on your preferred streaming platform. Spread the word, share our stories with your friends, and stay connected with us on our social media platforms. See you next time.